Hey everyone, my name is Haley with Haley Stitches, and today I'm going to teach you how to make a super easy quilt with just 2 charm packs. This quilt is made up from a classic quilt block that can be used in so many different ways, but with this pattern we're going to keep things really simple, and it's designed to be used specifically with charm packs so that you can complete this quilt in an afternoon and shop the fabric you already have in your stash. If you want to get the free pattern delivered to your inbox, you can click the link in the description below, enter in your email address, and I'll send it your way. The free pattern has 2 different size options, a baby size, which is a 36-inch square that uses 2 charm packs, and a throw size, which is a 52-inch square that uses 2 charm packs and a little bit of yardage. Whatever size you choose, the assembly is the same, but I'm going to be doing the baby version in this video. Let's get started.
I'll quickly go over all of the supplies you'll need for today's project. For fabric, I'm using 2 different charm packs. I'm using one plain white charm pack for my background, and I'll be using this green Gingham Fields charm pack for my patterned fabric. In addition to fabric, you'll need a matching thread, and my favorite color to use is gray. You'll need a rotary cutter and a rotary mat, and then some rulers. I am using these 2 rulers. One is a 6.5-inch ruler to trim down my charm squares, and the other is a 4.5-inch ruler to square up my 4-patch blocks, but all you really need is 1 square ruler. And everything will be linked in the description below. I'm going to cut my background fabric first, and I am using this white charm pack as my background fabric. You'll need a total of 41 5-inch squares. So I'm just going to take 1 away and save it for a future project. And then all we're going to do is cut these 5-inch squares down into 4.5-inch squares. So it'll be really quick and easy to trim down all of these squares for our background fabric. If you want to use yardage instead of a charm pack for your background fabric, you'll need 3/4 of a yard, and you'll cut your squares from there. Instructions for that are in the free pattern. And if you want to speed up the cutting process, just make sure you have a sharp rotary blade, and you can stack several of these squares on top of each other to make quick work of this background cutting. Next, it's time to cut our fabric A, and I am using this charm pack called Gingham Fields by My Mind's Eye. And the first step is going to be separating it into 2 separate piles, 1 pile of lighter fabrics and 1 pile of darker fabrics. We'll only need 40 squares, so I took 2 out to save for a future project. So now I have a total of 20 lighter squares and 20 darker squares, and they aren't separated perfectly, but I did the best I could to keep the lights with the lights and the darks with the darks. And as long as there's some contrast, it won't be a big deal. So keep the piles separate, and we'll start with our lighter fabrics. And what we're going to do is cut these into quadrants. So we're going to cut our 5-inch square into 4 2.5-inch squares. And there's several ways to do this, but I'll show you the first way is just using your regular cutting mat and rotary blade and rotating the fabric yourself. But a faster way that I prefer is using a rotating cutting mat. This is definitely not necessary to do this project, but I do find it a little bit easier. You don't have to move the fabric at all. Instead, you just rotate the mat itself. So that's why I really like this tool when doing this type of cutting. You'll want to cut all of your fabric A fabric into 2.5-inch squares, keeping the lights with the lights and the darks with the darks. You'll end up with a total of 160 2.5-inch squares. Now it's time to make our 4-patch blocks. Take 1 dark square, 1 light square, and sew them together using a 1/4-inch seam allowance. After they're sewn together, press to the right, and you'll make a total of 80 of these blocks with the dark light pairings. To finish off our 4-patch block, you'll take 2 of these dark light blocks, rotate 1 around so you get a dark light light dark pattern. And that's how you would piece the 4-patch if you don't have any directional prints. So for example, this written print here is what we would consider directional, meaning if it's placed upside down, it doesn't have the same effect. If you don't care if your directional prints are upside down or left and right, then you can disregard this part. But if you do want to keep your directional prints going the quote-unquote right way, I'll show you how to do that. Instead of making all of these pairs dark light, you'll want to make half of them dark light and half of them light dark. That way the directional print stays right side up. Now we're back to the regular piecing instructions, and you'll notice when you rotate the block that the seams are suddenly pressed in the opposite directions. This allows for your seams to nest, and nested seams means that they'll butt up right next to each other as you're piecing the block together, and that will make your intersection be nice and even and accurate. I press these 4-patch blocks open, but you can press them in whichever direction you prefer. Now it's time to piece together the rows in this quilt. There are 2 row layouts, row A and row B, and this one is row A. Row A starts with the 4.5-inch background block and alternates with the 4-patch block. So how I'm going to piece this together is just go one at a time so I don't get it all confused. I'm going to piece together one background square with a 4-patch, and then once I have that pieced together, I'm going to add on one more background square and just go all the way down the line. You definitely can chain piece this in groupings of 2 if you feel comfortable doing that, but I laid this all out beforehand and I don't want to get confused and mess things up, so I'm just going to do one at a time. This is what the piece together row A row looks like in that background 4-patch pattern. You'll end up with a total of 5 of these rows and press to the right. Next, we'll piece our row B rows, and this is a 4-patch background, 4-patch background pattern. So it's the exact same thing as row A, just the alternate. And I am going to piece this the same way. I'm going to do 4-patch and background together. Once I've pieced that, I'm going to add on another 4-patch and do that until I've pieced the entire row. Again, feel free to chain piece if you want to. This is what the pieced row B will look like in that 4-patch background pattern. You'll end up with 4 row B rows all pressed to the left. Now it's time to piece our quilt, so we will do an alternating row A and B pattern, and you see that checkerboard start to form. The seams will nest because the row A's are pressed to the right and the row B's are pressed to the left. So all you'll do to piece together this quilt is just go down in an A-B pattern until the entire quilt top is assembled. And this is what the final pieced quilt top will look like. And here's a closer look at the completely finished version of my quilt. I decided to do some straight line quilting that complemented the 4-patch pattern. If you want some help finishing your quilt, you want help with the basting, the quilting, and the binding, I posted a few of my favorite tutorials in the description below because I don't have any right now on my channel to share with you, but I know there's a lot of great people here on YouTube that do have videos that go in depth, so I wanted to share my favorites with you. If you liked today's video, I would appreciate it so much if you would subscribe to my channel and share it with a quilty friend. And if you end up making this quilt, I would love to see it. You can tag me on Instagram at Haley Stitches, or you can just email me a photo and I'll email you back and tell you how much I love it, because everything you guys do is so great and I really appreciate it when you share it with me. Thanks again for watching today's video, and don't forget to grab a copy of the pattern in the description below.